So section 3.2 is the same exact thing as what we did last time, just with a little bit more algebra. So we are doing the same exact topics, still identifying the same types of angles, whether they are all of these things that you see up here, corresponding linear pair, alternate interior, alternate exterior, vertical, consecutive interior, consecutive exterior. We're still making those relationships and those connections. Once you make those connections, it should be really easy because that connection tells you whether something is congruent, whether it's supplementary, and this one doesn't really happen very much. So it'll tell you whether it's congruent or supplementary. If you can do that, you can come up with every equation, and then it just comes a part of solving. All right. So that being said, we are going to run through this top part just to make sure that we're all on the same page with everything. All right. So first things first, you're going to look at angle 4 and you're going to look at angle 9. So angle 4 and angle 9 specifically are dealing with this angle here and this angle here. Now remember, what I like to do is I like to cross things off that do not have anything to do with the problem. So I'm crossing off the entire thing that has nothing to do with the problem. Obviously, you can't do this on your worksheet because if you do that, you're not going to be able to see everything else. But that should make it pretty easy to you because your brain should be able to think about this in the form of, I have a line up here, I have a line down here, I have a transversal line here, I'm talking about that angle, and I'm talking about that angle. I've just redrawn this picture, ignoring all of the numbers and making it look a lot easier. So the question is, are they on the same side or the opposite side? We can obviously see here that the transversal is this line here, and those two arrows are on opposite sides of that line. The two lines here and here, if I push those two lines together, this arrow and this arrow will both get hit, so that means that they are on the inside. If they're on opposite sides but on the inside of the line, that means they're alternate interior. And according to that worksheet that we did the other day, alternate interior angles are congruent. So the 3.2a worksheet tells us that alternate interior angles are congruent. I'm going to do the same exact thing for every single one of these and work my way through every single one of these. All right. If you can do that, you can do this entire worksheet and there's no issue. If you can't do what I just did, that is an issue. So angle 2 and angle 11, this angle here and this angle here. Again, I like to cross off and not look at anything else. So I like to not look at anything else. So I'm looking at that angle up top and the angle down below. So this angle here and this angle here. Obviously, again, if this line is the transversal, they're on opposite sides, which means they're alternate. And they are both on the outside of the line, this line and this line. If I smush those two lines together, these arrows do not get touched. So these are alternate exterior, which alternate exterior, according to your 3.2a worksheet, are also congruent to each other. Okay? So now as we keep moving on, I know I may be going kind of quick, but this is one of those things that I told you need to know by now. All right? 15 and 14, this angle here and this angle here. Again, cross off everything that doesn't have to do with it. So anything that doesn't have an arrow by it, I'm crossing off. So the only thing I have left are these. So if the only thing I have left are these, notice how 15 and 14 are across from each other. These are vertical angles. And according to one of our theorems, we know that vertical angles are congruent to each other. Okay? And then finally, for the last two, this probably is going to look something a little bit different. 11 and 8, 11 here, and 8 here. Again, cross off everything that doesn't have an arrow touching it. And now these two things aren't even on the same line. Since they're not even on the same line, I'm going to say that they have no relationship. I'm going to put a sad face. All right. And then finally, for the very last one, we have 14 and 7, angle 14 and angle 7. This thing gets crossed off because it has no arrows. This thing gets crossed off because it has no arrows. I've now created a line that looks like this with this angle here and this angle here. And you should be able to see right now that that is alternate interior. Oops. Go away. Alternate interior, and alternate interior angles are congruent to each other. So that's what I'm talking about. You should be able to recognize and identify those things that quickly. If you can't, we need to work together. We need to hang out and talk after the Zoom. We need to make sure that we figure out everything that's going on, because if we don't know these, then there is absolutely nothing that you can do to get through this section. If you don't know how to identify these, then this section is going to be almost impossible. If you know exactly how I just got everything that I got, this section is going to be a breeze for you. All right? So let's go back to the worksheet and we'll work through some algebra problems. Does anyone have any questions right now as we're working our way through? I will take your silence as an I do not have any questions, Mr. Shepard. So this question, obviously what it wants us to do is it wants us to find x and it wants us to find y. So what we need to do is we need to come up with a relationship. If we can come up with a relationship, then we're good, okay? So right here, if I look at x and I look at anything else, I can see that this angle right here is a right angle, which means that it's 90 degrees. So these two angles right here are the ones that I'm dealing with. This angle here and this angle here. Those are the two angles that I'm dealing with. And I can see that if this is the transversal right here, I can see that those two angles are both on the left side and they're both inside the parallel lines. So that means that they are consecutive interior. And remember, consecutive interior angles are supplementary, which means that they add up to 180 degrees. So I know that this angle x plus the other angle, which is 90, is going to add up to 180 degrees. So that tells me right now that x is going to equal 90 when I solve that equation. All right, so that should be something that's straightforward because you're looking at this angle and this angle. They are consecutive interior, which means that they're supplementary with each other. If they're supplementary with each other, that means that they're going to add up to 180 degrees. And if they add up to 180 degrees, that means x is going to be 90. Okay, that should be a straightforward concept. If you don't understand that concept, that's the stuff that we have to talk about with each other. All right, now I talk about this angle, angle y, and this angle. I know that those two things form a linear pair because if I'm not looking at anything up here, there's no arrow up there. If I'm not looking at anything here, these two things make up a line. If those two things make up a line, that means they add up to 180 degrees. So that means that they are also supplementary. So I know that y plus 90 is going to equal 180 degrees. So I know that y is going to equal 90. Now there is another way that you could do this, and if you see that other way, that's great. If not, I'm going to leave it at that. If you see the other way that you could solve this, that's fine. There's more than one way to solve this thing. You can solve it any way you want to as long as you're following the right steps. Questions on that? So all of these ones are a lot like what we just did. Some of them get a little bit more confusing. Some of them are a little bit easier. So let's go with one that's a little bit more confusing, like this one. This one's a little bit tougher. So since this one's a little bit tougher, it might take a little bit more work for us to be able to figure out. Now remember, one of the things that I said to you at the beginning of your proof career and the beginning of your geometry career is you need to be able to shut your brain off to certain things. So what I'm saying is you need to be able to take your brain and remove things with your brain so that way your picture looks easier. So for instance, if I go like this and take this line out, I can really recreate a picture that looks like this. Oops, let me try again because that was horrible. So I'm able to recreate a picture that looks like this. I have one parallel line like that. I have another parallel line like that. And I have a line that goes across it like this. So if I take off this red line, I have completely recreated the picture to look like this. If I've recreated that picture, I know that this angle right here is 140. And then using my brain, I would be able to say that this angle right here and this angle right here, they look the same, so they are the same when the lines are parallel. Those two angles are congruent, which means that that angle is also 140. Notice that this angle right here is made up of all of this right here. So if this whole thing equals 180 and this piece of it's 80, it should make sense that this piece is 60. If this whole thing right here is going to add up to the same thing that this is, and this thing is 140, that means that y should be 60 degrees. That should be something to think about. All right? So that's what you need to be able to do. You need to be able to shut your brain off to certain aspects, to certain things. All right? The other thing to think about is the same exact way that I did this first one, this angle right here and this angle right here are congruent to each other. And if I know that this angle and this angle add up to 180 degrees, that makes this angle right here 40. This angle plus this angle equals 180 because it's a linear pair. So that makes this angle right here 40 degrees. And I just said that those angles are the same. So if this angle is 40, that makes this angle 40. So that means that x is equal to 40 degrees as well. So this is the stuff that I need you guys to be able to do. I need you guys to be able to think and work and go through whatever you need to be able to figure out in order to see that these angles are the same. But this is something where you're going to have to practice, and I'm not seeing a lot of practice on big ideas stuff. I'm seeing people take like 3 minutes on a quiz, submit it, get a 1 out of 5, and then move on. You need to make sure that you're practicing this, and if you don't understand it, you need to make sure that you're asking me questions about it. All right? So I'm going to go through one more example, and then I want you guys to try this, and we can work through it together on Monday or tomorrow. And we can talk through what we need to talk through to figure out what we need to figure out. But I'm going to go through one of these algebra problems so that we can see what it looks like. All right? So I'll just pick one. And then I want you guys to try and finish this worksheet. I'm going to give you about, once we get done with this problem, probably 15 minutes to do this worksheet. If you want to hang out in here and do those problems in here with me, I think that's a great idea. If you don't want to do that, I understand, but I think it's a better idea for you to hang out and talk. All right? So first things first, I need to come up with an equation for x. So this is number 15. I need to come up with an equation for x. This one has x in it. This one does not have x in it. This one has a y in it. If I'm dealing with ones that have x's in it, I don't even want to think about the one that has y in it until the very end. So obviously I'm dealing with this angle here and this angle here. Right? So I'm dealing with those two angles. The first thing I want to do is identify the type of relationship that they have, and they are consecutive exterior. Consecutive exterior angles are supplementary. So right now I've just determined that those two angles are supplementary with each other. All right? Since those two angles are supplementary with each other, I am going to say that they add up to, that's what supplementary means, they add up to 180. So those two angles together will add up to 180. So I'm going to do 136 plus 6x plus 8 equals 180. Angle this one, or this angle and this angle will add up to 180 degrees. So I got that angle and that angle adding up to 180 degrees. I'm going to combine my like terms. 136 and 181 and 8 gives me 144. So I'm going to get 6x plus 144 is equal to 180. I'm going to solve for x by subtracting by 144. So I'm going to get 6x equals 36. Divide by 6, divide by 6, and I'm going to get x equals 6. That's what you have to be able to do. You have to be able to come up with that idea. You have to be able to solve that. This math is a 2 or 3 step equation. You are all capable of doing this 2 or 3 step equation. The setting up the question is the hardest part. So that was the x's. Here come the y's. So with the y's, what I want you to look at is, I don't care about the x's anymore. The x's have gone away. I'm not worried about them anymore. Don't want to talk about them. Don't want to look at them. So I'm dealing with this angle here and this angle here. I should be able to see that if this is the transversal, one of those angles is above, one of them is below. That means they're alternate. If my two parallel lines like this, if I smush them together, my arrows do not get touched, which means that these are exterior. And if they are alternate exterior angles, that means that this is going to be congruent because that's what those theorems told us. So that means they are going to equal each other. So they will equal each other. So that means my equation is going to be 3y plus 31 is equal to 136. This angle and this angle equal each other. So 3y plus 31 equals 136. So now I'm going to have 3y equals, actually, hang on, let me rewrite it. I'm going to subtract 31 from both sides. So I'm going to get 3y equals 105. I'm going to divide by 3, and I'm going to get y equals 35. All right? Does anyone have any questions or any issues? So we have until 9:30 right now. We have until 9:30 for you guys to try these problems, to hang out and ask questions, to get sorted out on things like alternate interior, alternate exterior, consecutive exterior, those things. We have 15 minutes for you guys to get those sorted out. Tomorrow is going to be a review day, which means that we are going to have more time to get these sorted out. As I told you, this is important. If you don't know this, it's going to be rough. So tomorrow we even have more time, and then Wednesday we take our quiz. All right? So I'm going to stop my recording.